Good morning. We would like to welcome everybody to this week's Grow, where we gather to recharge, organize, and work here as members of MWEG. We are talking this week with Megan Woods, who is our Senior Director of our Roots, specifically of our nonpartisan root. And she is going to talk to us about sharing light by embracing nonpartisanship. That's something that Megan is good about, and she keeps MWEG in check to make sure that we hold true to those standards for our members. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Megan to talk to us today.
Thanks, Rachel. So good morning, everybody. I always talk about nonpartisan when I come on these Grow calls, and today I wanted to just talk about also light. I love the imagery of light, and also I love real light. But I always feel like I have to start with a definition of what it means to be nonpartisan. And I went to actually the dictionary this time. And Merriam-Webster defines partisan as a firm adherent to a party, faction, cause, or person, especially one exhibiting blind, prejudiced, and unreasoning allegiance. And then the same Merriam-Webster defines nonpartisan as free from party affiliation, bias, or designation. So the words that really stood out to me in those definitions were that a partisan is an adherent, and the other word is allegiance. That's really stood out. And the nonpartisan is free from those things. And so you notice that in neither definition, it doesn't talk about opinions. It doesn't talk about standing on principles or anything like that. What it talks about is whether we are adhering to something else, whether we're showing allegiance to a party, or whether we're free from that. So in MWEG, we really encourage principled citizenship. We encourage freedom from those, that sort of allegiance to party affiliation. And I believe that this can help us share light when we embrace being nonpartisan. So I live in a wintry part of the world. It snowed a little bit last night. And I got to tell you how much I love the light. When spring tries to come and there's a little more light in the daytime, day lasts a little longer when the clouds break up a little bit and I can see light. It really affects my mood. I think it affects my physical health. I know it affects my mental health. My heart feels a lot lighter, both because it's brighter and also because it's less heavy when there's light. There's this beautiful little book I just finished reading to my little daughter, and I brought it, The Tale of Despereaux, which if you've read, is just a charming book. And the author says in it, and throughout the book, light is like the theme. And in it, she says, light is precious in a world so dark. And I love that. Light is precious. And there's a lot of darkness in our world, but light is precious, and we can share that light. And then I have another book here, and it's going to show it backwards on your screen. Tattoos of the Heart. Have you guys read this book? It's by Gregory Boyle. He's a Jesuit priest who runs a business called Homeboy Industries, which is a gang intervention program in Los Angeles. And he works with current and former gang members to help them become productive citizens. And it's just another just really beautiful book that brings a lot of light, called Tattoos on the Heart. I'm recommending that. But he says in it, this is a quote from Gregory Boyle. Jesus says, "You are the light of the world." I like even more what Jesus doesn't say. He does not say, "One day, if you are more perfect and try really hard, you'll be light." He doesn't say, "If you play by the rules, cross your T's and dot your I's, then maybe you'll become light." No, he says straight out, you are light. It is the truth of who you are, waiting only for you to discover it. And I think that belief really aligns perfectly with our doctrine. The Doctrine and Covenants tells us that the Spirit giveth light to every person that cometh into the world. We believe we come with light and that each person has this light. And then I'm going to go to the Book of Mormon because it deepens our understanding of light. When Jesus first appeared to the people of Nephi, he introduced himself by saying, "I am the light and the life of the world." Some of the first words he says to them, as many times that Jesus is identified as the light of the world. But then as he continues teaching the Nephites over the next few chapters, he says to them, "I give unto you to be the light of this people." So now it becomes a gift to us, that we can be the light. And he says, "Therefore, let your light so shine before the people." And then a few chapters later, he continues to talk about light. And he says, "Therefore, hold up your light that it may shine unto the world. Behold, I am the light which ye shall hold up." And so he doesn't just leave us like glowing on our own. He tells us that we hold up his light. And that's the way we share our light, and by sharing his light. So we know we're born with light, like Gregory Boyle says, like the Doctrine and Covenants says. It's part of our divinity as children of God. It's in us, waiting for us to discover it. But when we embrace that light that we're born with, the Doctrine and Covenants tells us that we will receive more light, and that light will grow brighter and brighter until the perfect day. And so we are going to talk about what light gives us and how we can share that by through nonpartisanship, right? So first of all, the first thing that light obviously gives us is it helps us to see. So if you can imagine watching the sunrise, at first your view is dimmed and blurred, and then as the light increases, objects become distinct and easier to discern. Spiritual light helps us to discern plainly, and then we can share that light when we choose to see or discern the best in other people. And this is a gift that nonpartisanship can give us. President Stephen L. Richards, who was once in the first presidency, he said, "The highest type of discernment is that which perceives in others and uncovers for them their better natures, the good inherent within them." And more recently, Elder Mark A. Bragg said, "May we see the light of Christ in others constantly and help them see it in themselves." So our challenge then is to discern the good in people who think and believe and act differently than we do, especially politically, which is a major source of just turmoil in our hearts and in our communities. So we have to actively look for the good in them and understand their perspectives, understand their humanity, and look for their goodness. Look for that light within them. So a personal experience during the summer of 2020, you might remember, was pretty vicious time online. A lot of my friends who normally don't spend a lot of time online were on there, very active and not being very nice. There were some several issues that were very divisive. And I don't mind people having different opinions, but what I do mind is that as I read their different opinions, it was like they were telling me that if I disagreed with them, I was either really stupid, really evil, or just really wanting to destroy America. And I don't think any of that describes me. And so I did not care for it. But one day I was scrolling through Facebook on my phone, and I set it down. And I just went, "Oh, I am," this was during lockdowns and social distancing. So I sat down my phone and I thought, I am so glad I don't have to be at church with these people right now. And immediately the Spirit corrected me and chastised me and said, "No, you have to be back at church with these people so you can see how good they are." And that was a really interesting correction for me. Of course, church started just for us where we live a few weeks later, and I was able to intentionally look for the good in people who I had forgotten how good they were. I had forgotten the light that they had. And what was interesting, I know we all talk a lot about how the perfect Instagram family that we see online doesn't really exist, in real life. But the opposite of that is also true. Sometimes people are posting a lot of hate online, but it's an incomplete picture of the multidimensional person that exists. And so it becomes our challenge to kind of read between the lines sometimes. And also, if we know those people in real life, remember why we were friends in the first place. And so we kind of need to see their intent. A few years ago, I went to it was like a panel discussion, and there were two congressmen on the discussion. both from Utah. One was a Democrat named Ben McAdams, and one was a Republican named John Curtis. And they both supported the same issue, but they supported different paths to achieving the same end. And as they were speaking, Congressman McAdams said, and this is paraphrased, he said, when you start talking to people and learn to understand their why, you find commonality. And then you can talk about how you should proceed. Often our whys are the same, but the hows are very different. We can find compromise on the how if we respect the why. If it is our inability to see why someone supports what they do that causes the contempt that plagues our nation. And I just love that idea, because people have genuine, sincere, good reasons for supporting what they do. And we can look for that. We can find it. And when we do that, it can help us reduce the partisan divides that are destructive. Okay, so the second thing light gives us is that it warms us. Like I said, I live in a very wintry place, and I can be outside if the clouds part in the winter and the sun shines through. The air temperature is going to stay the same, but I feel warmer. I feel like I really enjoy a sunny winter day. But that warmth, that's associated with love, symbolically. And of course, Christ's love is very welcoming. One of my favorite scriptural passages is from Lehi. He says, I am encircled about eternally in the arms of his love, which is just something that draws me, makes me want to be closer to Christ. That love is the defining characteristic of all disciples of Christ, who said, by this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if ye have love one to another. So this is our challenge. We want to share the light of Christ through love. President Holland, in his recent general conference talk, he said he was speaking about praying. I think the talk is called Motions of a Hidden Fire. He said, when we don't know how or exactly for what to pray, we should begin and continue until the Holy Spirit guides us into the prayer we should be offering. This approach may be the one we have to invoke when praying for our enemies and those who despitefully use us. So I was reading this a couple of weeks ago, and my first thought was, well, I don't have any enemies. And then immediately came to my mind the name of a politician whom I do not care for. And I wouldn't describe him as my enemy, but I felt like I was saying, okay, you do have people that you are despiteful towards and who probably wouldn't like me if they met me. But so I decided to take President Holland up on this challenge. He says we should just begin to pray, and that the Holy Ghost will tell us what to pray for. And so I did that immediately, and it was pretty amazing that the Holy Ghost prompted me and taught me what to pray, and didn't make me wait for weeks begging for something good to pray for this individual. I was given something that I could pray for very sincerely, and that would be beneficial to him and in real life. And I am not going to tell you what it was, because you would have a different experience if you also experimented with this. But we can spread love and that kind of warmth that the light gives us to people in our own circles, and by praying for them, by understanding them. We can do that for the uncle or niece who just drives us crazy. We can also do that for people like our school board member who just irks us so much, or a member of the media. We all have people, we might not think of them as our enemies, but we also don't think of them in friendly terms, and we can change that. And we can share the light of Christ when we do that. So the next thing that light gives us is light is often used symbolically for being enlightened. My little daughter, or she's not little anymore, she's graduating from high school tomorrow, but when she was little, she made a light bulb out of paper, and she stuck it on a headband. And so that anytime she got a great idea, she'd pop it on her head and say, ding. And she's adorable. That's what it was. But I always think of that when you have it, we've all had those moments when we suddenly understand something and we're like, oh, ding, like you feel the light bulb clicking on. And we know that Jesus is the source of eternal truth. But we're also commanded to seek secular truth, to understand facts. And this is just an incredible way to reduce partisanship when we're seeking truth in everything we do. And so, Rachel, would you mind sharing that chart? Y'all know the ad font. How do you say it, Rachel? Ad fontus?
That's how I say it. Ad fontes, yeah.
Well, then that's the right way. So these ad fontes charts that we have, and this is just one example, they have many, that show things that media sources that are more reliable are higher, and then less reliable or lower. And then things that skew right or go to the strong right, you can see that, and strong left. And what interests me whenever I look at these charts is that there is nothing that's in the middle when you go down. When it's less reliable, there's nothing in the center there. And there's nothing that's more reliable that's, far partisan left or far partisan right. The facts are in the middle. And this is just, I'm always fascinated by that. I can't say enough about how media literacy and intentionally choosing media sources that are factual, this reduces so much in partisanship. And I think it's more important now than ever. My personal opinion is that what our media literacy team does at MWEG is some of the most important work we do. And if you followed along with MWEG just for the media literacy teaching, you would make the world a better place by sharing that, by implementing it in your own life. The truth that we seek is that really reduces polarization tremendously when we're all on the understanding and on the same page about what the truth is. Okay, you can unshare, Rachel. Thank you for doing that. And so then the next thing that light gives us is that light dispels gloom. So I think of my other child. Well, I have 5, but I'm only thinking of 2 today, apparently. But my son, he loves rain. He loves clouds. And when he was very young, he would say, oh, it's my favorite type of day. It's a gloomy, cloudy day. And he'd use that word gloomy as his favorite all the time. I'm not my son. And I like rain, all right, but I don't love gloomy days. I really like the sunshine. And when it breaks through the clouds, I feel like it's bringing relief from storms and symbolically relief from despair and depression, which is what Christ's light does for us. I feel like Christ's light dispels gloom because he atoned for our sins. And we can spread that when we forgive other people. And we can also share that, which is a commandment for us. So we live in a time where the trend is to remove yourself from anyone who threatens or challenges you, right? Some call it censorship, some call it cancel culture. Some people use an extreme form of setting their boundaries, although healthy boundaries, I'm in support of that, but some people take this to extreme. I don't think this is the Lord's way to cut people out of our lives. We live in communities, we want to build Zion, and that requires a level of forgiveness. Elder Uchtdorf said, remember, heaven is filled with those who have this in common. They are forgiven and they forgive. And this isn't just for a church setting or just for a family setting. This is for a community setting as well. So just making sure I'm clear, I'm not talking about letting ourselves be abused. And I'm not talking about voting for somebody with a shady character. I'm just talking about in real life that we need to be careful not to cut people out. That we need to try to forgive them. And we can try not to hold grudges or to look for reasons to continue to hate people. Sometimes once somebody offends me, I continue to look for reasons. Probably shouldn't admit this. Like next time they do something, I say, well, that just aligns perfectly with, the reason I already am mad at them. So we need to be careful with those kinds of things. We criticize that our world has become this world of echo chambers and tribes, but we sometimes don't recognize the way we are doing that to ourselves by adjusting our social media feeds or adjusting who we hang out with in real life because of people who upset us and really challenge us. Nonpartisanship requires us to learn from others. And as we talked about earlier, sometimes that requires us to kind of read between the lines because not everybody has communication skills. And so we have to recognize the light in them, the goodness in them, and kind of read between the lines as they're expressing themselves badly. So we don't just cut them out immediately because they, didn't speak politely, if that makes sense. So the next thing that light gives us is light gives life. And every living thing depends on sunlight, right? Maybe indirectly, but it depends on sunlight for its survival. And Jesus also gives life through his resurrection, and which is his unique gift. But I was thinking about how we could share this gift. And I think the thing resurrection gives us is hope. And that is something that we can share. Peter calls it a lively hope, and which to me is like a life-giving hope. It enlivens us and makes us want to keep getting out of bed, even if it's cloudy outside. But hope brings us life. Our world is very jaded, very cynical, and sometimes the idea of hope feels really naive, very simplistic. Hope is not trivial. Hope gives us safety and stability. It strengthens communities when we can have hope for the future and look to each other. So we're not, pessimism and despair leave us dreading the future. Hope gives us, it doesn't blind us to what's going on, but it can give us a realistic view of what wonderful things could come. There's a, let's see, Mormon told us, because hope, what are we going to hope it for? And Mormon said, and he asked that question, and what is it that ye shall hope for? Behold, I say unto you that ye shall have hope through the atonement of Christ and the power of his resurrection to be raised unto life eternal. So again, we're looking at that resurrection, but what that gives us is this ability to think beyond right here and right now. And when we have hope in eternity. And so that gives us the ability to see and look for good in others because we have hope for their eternity as well as ours. And it gives us just this perspective that things are so much bigger than the little things that we deal with every day that just kind of bring us down. And then this verse from Ether, I just think is spectacular. It says, wherefore whoso believeth in God might with surety hope for a better world, yea, even a place at the right hand of God, which hope cometh of faith, maketh an anchor to the souls of men, which would make them sure and steadfast, always abounding in good works, being led to glorify God. So we'll break that down a little. It says, might with surety, with confidence, hope for a better world. And of course, we're hoping for a better eternal world, but I believe we can also hope for a better temporal world, a better place, a better community. We have seen a lot of improvements. And when you go back and look, big picture things that we are improving, and we can hope for more improvements, hope for a better world. It says that hope is an anchor to the souls. And so that's something that it's very stabilizing. It's not, you're not being blown about with every despair and every tragedy that's afflicting the world. Hope can give us a stability and give us a vision, a focal point, I guess, something to look forward to. And making us sure and steadfast, which goes along with being anchor. And then it says, always abounding in good works. This is something that hope gives us. So when people have hope, they're motivated to volunteer, to serve others. And then when you're volunteering or serving, you are filled with more hope. And so becomes a beautiful cycle of hope and life. So we can reduce partisanship, reduce polarization when we look for opportunities to volunteer in our communities, getting to know people who are different from us, who have different life experiences, different perspectives. And, you know, when you're in a volunteer situation, a giving situation, you're not judging people based on their political views. You're judging them based on need. Well, maybe not judging. You're helping them, serving them based on need or based on opportunity. And you're uniting with other people who have these same goals, who may be very, very different from you. So you're not looking at somebody's political affiliation at all when you're in a volunteer situation. So just, we all have light. We were born with light, and we are increasing in light every day if we choose to. And light is not meant to just be for us. It's meant to be shared. Of course, in the Bible, it says, do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, and they put it on a candlestick, and it giveth light to all that are in the house. And if we hold our light, like we keep it to ourselves, it dims and might go out. But it's when we share it that it grows stronger, and that hope can increase. You know, we could just spread more goodness and cheer. We know there's a lot of light in the world because we are in a work where we can see a lot of goodness, but we also know there's a lot of darkness, right? And Elder Jeffrey R. Holland was speaking at BYU several years ago, and he said that the negativity that we see has always been so down through time, but it doesn't have to be. So this is from him. He says, so go out there and light a candle. Be a ray of light. Be your best self and let your character shine. Cherish the gospel of Jesus Christ and live it. The world needs you, and surely your Father in heaven needs you if his blessed purposes for his children are to prevail. If correcting all the world's ills seems a daunting task, so be it. Go out there and be undaunted. And I love that. And I just want to leave, you know, and end on that note, that we can go out there, be undaunted, and because we have something worth sharing. So that's it.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? As I was writing some notes from what Megan was saying, you know, one of the things that this reminded me of is, you know, going out and being undaunted. It reminds me a little bit of how I came to find MWEG, which was an invitation from a friend to join a group of women who just wanted to be educated about the political scene and active in their communities. And so this made me think, if there's something about MWEG and this nonpartisanship and media literacy and the things that MWEG is sharing, go and share it. You know, we talk about this, you know, maybe invite one friend that you think might be interested to be part of an organization like MWEG that this might speak to. But I also like that this, you know, this idea of light is just, Megan, you did such a great job of sharing that, and how that we can incorporate that into our, as you put, into the temporal world and a temporal perspective. And I feel like I'm in the hope camp. I'm not in the despair camp of this election cycle. What happens either way with something, you know, we're going to have a vote. There's going to be an outcome. And I'm hopeful that either way that we can get through it. Right. So I appreciate you reminding us to have that hope and to hold on to that, you know, through our faith. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Does anybody else have any thoughts? All right. Well, with that, we will say thank you for joining us on this week's Grow. And I'd invite you to join us next week. We're going to have just an update from one of our co-executive directors, Jennifer Thomas, who will just kind of update us on where MWEG is and what we've been up to, and an invitation for you to get involved. If you want to volunteer, you can always go through MWEG Central or go to the website and see where there's some areas of interest to you that you might want to be a volunteer. But again, I'm going to invite you to, if there's something of MWEG that speaks to you and you want to share that with a friend, I invite you to do that as well and ask them to join us. So thank you, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you.